Hey, and thanks for watching. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through my new multi-scenario land development model. Now, the genesis of this model really came from the various requests I've received over the last few years for help modeling for sale development. And when I say for sale development, I'm speaking of everything from master development, where a developer develops a large commercial site and then sells off pads to individual developers. Townhome development, well, where a developer is developing both land, but then also building the vertical construction and selling individual townhomes. You could say the same for single family homes. And then really any sort of just general land development where the intention is to take a bare parcel of land, redevelop that parcel, and then sell either physical structures or portions of that larger parcel to the next buyer. And up until now, I've referred my residential land development model to individuals who wanted to do this sort of analysis, and that model just isn't entirely equipped to handle the types of variation that comes in land development. For those who are looking at townhome development, we'd referred Michael's condo development model, but again, it wasn't tailor-made, or better said, it didn't provide the flexibility that one needed in order to model the various scenarios. So what you're seeing here is beta version 0.1. This will grow as you users of the model report to me bugs, as I have time to add new features. And so in the coming months, this will improve and expand, and eventually will leave its beta stage and get to just a full public release. So you download the model. The first tab you'll see, as with all of our models, is this version tab. If you're new to Adventures in CRE or any of our models, make sure to click this new to A.CRE, read our best practices guide. It will walk you through best practices for using real estate financial models. Otherwise, you'll notice on this tab any changes that have been made from this version to the model. You can track those changes, and that will help orientate you to differences between what you're seeing here on the video and what will be added to this model in the future. There are two other worksheets or tabs in this model. We have a summary tab where there are a few inputs. Again, blue font cells are inputs. In this case, you would add just some general project level inputs such as project name, address, also the model type, and this is an important input. So right now this can accommodate commercial land development, residential land development, and then also basic townhome and single family home developments. So in this case, let's just assume commercial land development. You can also enter your company name here. Again, this sheet, the summary worksheet, is printable. In fact, the version you're finding right now is already set to print mode, and so it's just a matter of clicking the file and print button and you can print what's on this worksheet. Now here you select the number of phases, and as of version 0.1, this only allows for one phase. In the coming months, I'll add functionality to do multi-phase in this model, but right now one phase. And in most cases, even if you have a two-phase development, the one phase in this model is, or you can make the one phase work for your scenario. You can also then choose whether you're using feet or meters, or the imperial versus metric system. And it will automatically then update your measurement of land from acres to hectares, and will label things either meters squared or feet squared. We'll keep to feet because we're in the United States. Many of you aren't, though, so we have that functionality. Also, your analysis start date. For this, I'll assume January 2020. This was when, or the first period when you spend money on the project. That's your analysis start date. And then down below, you're going to find some just basic outputs. These are black font cells, such as the project size, construction start and end, as well as the project end month. Just a basic sources and uses pulled from the underwriting tab. Some key assumptions and return metrics, including a pro forma here off to the left, project profit, net profit, or net project margin. And then here to the right, some unlevered and levered return metrics, IRR, equity multiple, net profit, both at the project level as well as for the two partners. And then at the bottom, two charts that visualize project cash flow. So the top chart are total project costs, including financing. And there are 5 categories of that: land cost, 2 types of hard cost: horizontal, which horizontal are your land development component; vertical, if you intend to add structures to your development, that would be under vertical hard costs. And then we have soft costs and carry costs. And then down below, the breakout of your net proceeds from lot sales. So this is just showing the sales schedule for, well, in our case, we're actually going to be having pads because this is a commercial development. There's also this spot here where you can insert an image, and that just adds some visual appeal to your summary of investment worksheet. And again, because this is printable. So that's the summary worksheet. In this case, let's just leave these inputs as they are, but you would add your project name and your address, leave our company name, and so forth. So let's go now to the underwriting tab. This is a common methodology that I've been following the last few years in my models, where I put all of my inputs, or almost all of my inputs, on this one underwriting tab. The inputs being in this left-hand side, blue font cells again. And then to the right, the impact of those inputs are automatically visualized in some periodic cash flow. In this case, we're using monthly cash flow. So for instance, under land costs, we have a land purchase, and $3 million happening all at once in month 1. And so out to the right, you see that $3 million visualized. But if I, for instance, let's say that that was actually in month 6. You'll see now I changed this to month 6, the start and the end of this cash flow line item. So now it happens in month 6. And then we could say, let's have due diligence happen over a 6-month period. The method at which this is forecast, we have the option of choosing detail. If you do detail, you actually come out here to the right and you manually enter the values. So for instance, land purchase may happen in phases. So you purchase a portion in month 1 and another portion in month 60 and a third portion in month 120. You would choose the detail option. But here, say for due diligence, we can also choose straight line. So that's going to be an even amount distributed over the period from when that cash flow starts and when that cash flow ends. Or in other words, over a 6-month period, straight line, 30,000 in due diligence. So we have 5, 5, 5 each over 6 months, or 30,000 in total. Now you have an error check in this column N. And what this check does is it looks at the sum of all the cash flows out here in your DCF, your discounted cash flow model out to the right, and it confirms that it equals the budget in column L. So if you use straight line or even S-curve, this is automatically calculated. This should always be okay. If it's not, that means it's an error in my calculation, and I'll need to fix it. But in the case of a detail, here you can, so let's say 30,000, let's say we do 15,000 in month 1. You'll note as soon as I do that, the sum of all the values out here to the right, that sum does not equal the 30,000. So I'll just need to correct that. So let's zero those out. You'll see now 15 plus 15 gives us 30. Now this error check toggles to OK. Let's just turn this back to straight line. And then we have some closing costs. That's going to happen in month 6. So I set both of these values to month 6. Again, this cash flow item starts in month 6, ends in month 6. It's 30,000. That's our closing. So then we have hard costs. Actually, let me toggle this back to month 1 to keep this nice and simple. Due diligence, month 1, closing costs. And what I'm really saying is there may have been some due diligence costs in the past. I'm gonna front load those all up and have those hit my DCF all at the same time as the closing of the land in month 1. So then we move down, and again, we're inside the development cash flows investment section. At the top, we have an investment description section, and these are just items that come from our analysis, other parts of the worksheet. They're all black font cells. But then we come into the second section, again, development cash flows. We talk through land costs. We have hard costs, and you forecast these in the same way that you forecast as we forecast the land costs. Now, I have two types of hard costs in this model. One, horizontal. And when we say horizontal, we're really referring to the land development component. So underground, grading, gutter, sidewalk, streets. If you have overhead electrical. This would also include common area, construction, anything that's horizontal. Really, you're preparing the land to sell or to then develop with vertical. And vertical hard costs then referred to any structures that go on the land that go vertical. So in the case of a townhome development, those would be your townhomes. In the case of single family. If you have something else so for instance, you could model, say, a hotel development with this, and you intend just to sell the hotel. You're not operating the hotel. You don't get any income from the hotel, but perhaps you are involved in the construction of the hotel, and you're delivering a completed building. You could conceivably use this model for that, but this is more meant for residential or commercial land development, or as this expands, possibly townhome and single family development. But you have this vertical hard cost section. Now, what you'll notice are the items are blue font cells. So you change those depending on the line items that you have in your own budget. You can also add items. And to add items, what you do is you come in somewhere between the top and the bottom line item within this section. Select the entire row, right-click and do Insert, and then choose either the row above it or the row below it. So I'm going to use the row below it. Copy the entire row, select that empty row, and paste. And doing that, you've now added a line item. Now, in the coming months and in future versions, I will add a macro that will automatically do that for you. It will also delete line items. But for now, you need to manually add line items if need. It's quite simple, as you saw. And the beauty of this model is all of the calculations for this line appear within this line. So you come out here to the right and you see this, call it a like back-end calculation section. And this is for each line item. And so it really is just as simple as inserting a row, copying either the row immediately above it or immediately below it, and pasting it in that empty row. And now you've added a line item. And that's the same for the for sale units, which we'll look at in a minute. So this is uses of capital. You'll again model your hard costs in the same way that I showed with your land costs. You'll do the same with your soft costs. That gets you then to a total project cost before debt, or in this case, 7.327 million. And out to the right, you can see how those uses of capital happen in each period. We then assume some debt, and that comes in carry costs. So we have a capitalized construction interest. Capitalized means that the construction interest is added to the project budget and is covered by some source of use, in this case, covered by an interest reserve account in your construction loan. And then we have financing costs. And the financing cost, you actually choose when that occurs. So by default, it's month one here. But you would change this to line up with when you expect your construction loan to close. You also, some lenders charge the fee over a period of time. It's rare, but when I was developing in Latin America, that was how the fee was charged. And so every lender is going to be a little different. Most will charge that fee upon closing the facility, the loan up front. And then you choose the amount here. So in this case, right, month one is when that happens. It can only be modeled as a straight line, and therefore, in this case, month one, 80,000, it all happens in month one. So that gets us then to total project costs after debt, the carry costs plus project costs before debt, 7.575 million. Now, these are our uses of capital, and we need sources of capital to cover those uses of capital. And sources of capital must always equal in each period the exact same amount as the uses of capital, right? And so in this model in version 0.1, we have two buckets. We have equity, and the equity includes a general partner and a limited partner. And then we have construction debt, just one tranche of debt. For now, I will likely add mezzanine debt in the future version of the model, but for now you have just a construction loan. In the construction loan, there's two inputs. There's a loan to cost input, and then there's an interest rate that's charged. And this is a fixed rate. In the future, I'll add a variable rate. It's a fairly easy feature that I'll be adding. And there'll be a macro where you can turn that on and off. But for now, it's fixed. So just make an estimate of your average rate over the hold period or the hold period. And so here, let's go to 70%, and let's assume a 4.75 rate on the construction debt. Okay, now what you'll notice as soon as I start making inputs, this red click to recalculate button appears at the top. And the reason why is construction interest is circular logic, right? First off, you're charging interest on top of interest, and the amount of the construction loan is going to depend on the amount of interest that's due, because right, the construction loan includes that interest reserve. And so what I do to avoid using Excel's iterative calc feature, which there's a lot of reasons why I don't like it, the largest being it slows your workbook way down, and it's also not always accurate, is I've left a plug value. You'll notice here, if this is a black font cell, but there's no formula in here. And the reason for that is this allows us to manually change this value until the actual percent of sources for our debt is equal to our loan to cost. So we could do this manually, right? So let's say 2.4 million gets us to 68.3, 2.350 gets us to 69, 2300 gets us almost there, 2275. Now I'm at 70%, about, and I can go out and you'll see that I'm not quite 70%. So that's the first option, and I could have made this a blue font cell, and you actually would have to manually go in, and anytime some of these inputs change, let's say we come up here and I don't know, let's make the construction cost horizontal instead of from month 2 to month 13. Let's go to month 11. And you'll notice as soon as I do that, right, it changes the flow of the uses, which changes the flow of the sources, which changes the interest that's charged, and the click to recalculate. Now I'm not on. Then I would have to manually go in and change this. And so what I've done is I've just written a macro that iteratively changes this value until the percent of sources for the debt, the actual loan to cost, equals your user-defined loan to cost. So you click it, it's instant. Okay, so those are your inputs for construction debt. You'll see inputs for equity at the very bottom. But what you'll then find are your cash flow of sources. And out here to the right, you can see how, for instance, equity comes out in month 1, and then debt begins to flow. So this has an order where equity goes first, debt funds second. So 100% of the required equity happens in month 1, and that's because there's a loan closing, a land closing. The land closing amount exceeds the total of equity, and therefore the loan begins to also fund in month 1. And because the loan begins funding in month 1, there's interest due starting in month 2. And this is the interest reserve, right? Up here, you can also find the capitalized interest, 3394, mirrors the interest reserve. You'll also see that the total project cost after debt, or the total uses, equal total sources in each period. Or in other words, these are the sources that are covering these uses, and you can track that out all the way to the far right. You can also see what percentage of the debt or of the total sources is interest reserve versus the construction loan. So in this case, 2.6 of our entire capital stack is that interest reserve account. So that gets us to, or that's the completion of our development cash flows section with our sources and uses. We then move to sale cash flows. This is our reversion cash flows. So if you're an accelerator member in our program, we teach this concept of investment cash flows, operating cash flows, and reversion cash flows. That's the anatomy of the real estate DCF. In the case of for sale real estate, there is no operating cash flow. Or in other words, these assets do not produce a monthly operating income stream. So in the case of land, right, these are pads because this is commercial development. A retail anchor pad does not produce income, regular income. And therefore you will find in this model, no operating cash flow section. So we immediately go to the reversion cash flow section, which here I call the sale cash flows. And here really you're going to line out what units will be sold and how those units will be sold. And you'll notice that this methodology is very similar to forecasting our development cash flows. So you have a line item, you have a start month for when this line item begins to fund or to sale. You have an end. You have a method, either straight line or detail. Okay, there's no S-curve because you wouldn't S-curve a sale, but you either have a straight line where you say, okay, over some period of 12 months, and let's say I have 20 units that are one of these line items. That would be the case, say, of townhomes. I want an equal number of sales in each month over that 12-month period. You can also, though, detail it, where you say, okay, let's say there's 3 units and 1 unit sells in month 12 and another unit sells in month 17 and the last one sells in month 19, right? And you detail those out. You also have an air check that helps you determine whether your total sale amount, and this is gross before costs, is equal to what you've forecasted out to the right. In this case here, though, I'll toggle this back to straight line. And so what I have here is I have 2 retail anchor pad sites, and there's just one of each. And what I could have done is just had a one line item, call it retail anchor pads. I could have done 2. I could have set this to 14 and 15 and then done straight line between the 2. But in this case, I preferred to separate them out because they're slightly different size. One's 200,000 square feet, the other's 175,000 square feet. The sale price for each, $8 a foot for the larger pad, $9 a foot for the smaller pad. Here's the total amount. So this is the input. You'll notice up here what I did is I took the size of the pad, I multiplied it by my value per unit, or in this case square foot per square feet for this pad, and I get to 1.6 million. Same with my retail anchor pad too. Now what I did though is for my retail inline pad sites, I have 5 of those. And I want those to model over some period of time. So right now these retail anchor pads sell in 14 to 15. I'm going to have these 5 sell between month 16 and month 20. And I say sell, these are closings. And so 2.5 million in a straight line fashion, or in other words, 500,000 each from month 16 through 20. And out to the right, you'll see it happen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That's my retail inline pad sites. I have a multi-family pad. So this is a mixed use commercial development. That one pad is sold to a multifamily developer in month 18, 125,000 square feet, 1.875 million. I've got a hotel pad. I just simply sell the hotel the pad to a hotel developer in month 21, 100,000 square feet, 1.7 million. And then I have what I'm calling an entertainment pad, and that's 900,000. My thought here was, okay, this was like an entertainment venue, maybe a little concert venue, and that's sold to, developer of that site. Very likely the same developer as the hotel. So those are my pads. The total sales, 10.15 million. Now you'll remember my costs are 7.6 million. So now I begin to see my profit. However, there's some selling costs associated with selling those pads. And so it's a percentage of the total. In this case, I put 4%. That's 406,000. And you'll see out to the right, that value is automatically calculated based on the amount of sales in each period. It just simply takes subtracts 4% off of any amount of sale in that period. And that gets us to net proceeds from lot sales, or 9.744 million. So that's the end of our real estate DCF. We then get into our real estate, our project level inputs. We then calculate our project level cash flow and returns. So what we're doing is we're adding up the values from those sections up above. First on an unlevered basis. So I look at total project cost before debt. That's an outflow of capital. Our inflows are our net proceeds from lot sales. That gets us a total 2.416 million. Out to the right, we have the actual cash flows, and off those cash flows, we calculate an internal rate of return, again unlevered, and an equity multiple. So our equity over a 24-month development period grows by 1.33 times. Okay, and it's unlevered, so that's our entire capital deployed. On a levered basis, or with debt, we have what total project cost after debt. So that takes into account the financing fees and the construction interest. We then have some loan funding. So this is inflows of capital. So we have outflows of capital. We have inflows of capital. We then have our net proceeds from lot sales, inflow, but then we have an outflow to pay off our loan. And you'll see that the loan inflows match the loan payoff outflows, and we get a net levered cash flow amount. Again, the line out to the right shows 2.282583 million of equity that goes out, and then no equity outflows, and then we have net equity inflows here. So that gives us a 193 equity multiple on a levered basis, and just shy of 50% IRR over a 2-year hold, again on a levered basis. And then we're done with project level cash flows. Those flow then, this line flows into our partnership level cash flows. We have two partners. You have a GP and an LP. You can set their names here. You have some ownership percentage between the two partners. And then you say, okay, the preferred return is, call it 12%. The promote paid out is 30%. The promote, again, paid by the partnership to the general partner. And then you see then the total contributions by each partner, the distribution amounts in each of the tiers. So this is a 2-tier waterfall, right? So the first tier is a return of capital and a payment of the 12% preferred return. The second tier then is where the GP is paid as promote, and any excess cash flow after paying the GP, the promote, is shared between the partners based on their pro rata share of ownership. And this then lines out the GP and the LP's distribution percentage in each tier, the total amount distributed in each tier, and then down here you'll see the net cash flow line and returns for each of the partners. So the general partner puts out 228,000, gets back 228,000 plus 669, such that it nets 669,905. That's an IRR of that, and an equity multiple just shy of 4 times. The limited partner, 40% IRR, 171. And again, you'd expect this outsized share or outsized return to the general partner because it's earning a 30% promote above a 12 pref. So that is the end of the inputs for my multi-scenario land development model. Please let me know if you have any questions about this. I walked through it fairly slow. I'm hoping that most of your questions have been answered. If you have any, please let me know. Otherwise, enjoy using this model.